This is lesson 109, diagramming adjective clauses. The first step to diagram a sentence with an adjective clause is to identify the clause. In our sentence, Dr. Bender, who teaches Bible, has a radiant testimony. The clause is who teaches Bible. It's an adjective clause because the whole clause is answering an adjective question about Dr. Bender. Which Dr. Bender? The one who teaches Bible. When we diagram this, we're going to have one main sentence diagram line for the main sentence. There's going to be no room on there for this clause because a clause has its own subject and its own verb. And there's no place for a second subject and verb line on the main diagram. So what we're going to end up doing is making a second separate sentence diagram just for the clause and then linking them together with a dashed line. So if this clause is going to go on its own sentence diagram line, then we realize that every word in the clause is a sentence part. Every word in the clause has a job to do in its sentence. So let's start by diagramming the main sentence. Dr. Bender has a radiant testimony. When I diagram something, first I look for the subject and verb. And the subject is Dr. Bender. And the verb is has. So I've done this word and I've done this word. What do I do with a radiant testimony? Well, Dr. Bender has who or what? He has testimony. So testimony is a direct object. Remember, if this is an action verb, I have a direct object. If it's a linking verb, then I have a predicate adjective or a predicate nominative. So, he has testimony. And then these are just adjective modifiers, so they go underneath testimony. He has a testimony, and he has radiant testimony. So now I've taken care of all the words in the main sentence. Now I'm going to diagram the clause. The clause has a subject and a verb, so that's where I'm going to begin. Separate diagram line. Subject, verb. The verb is teaches. And to find the subject, I ask myself who or what teaches. And in this clause, the relative who, the relative pronoun who, is doing the subject job. So I put it here. Who teaches? And what do I do with Bible? It's being a direct object because it answers the question, who teaches what? So I make a direct object section of this line and put it in. Now every word is taken care of. Now I'm going to connect the two sentences, and the way we connect them is we make a dashed line connecting the relative of the clause to the word that the whole clause is modifying in the main sentence. Remember, my adjective clause is answering a question about Dr. Bender. So I need to connect Dr. Bender with the the relative of the clause. And I do that with a dashed line, like that. Okay, in our next sentence, she knew the girl to whom the door prize was awarded. First, identify the clause, which would be to whom the door prize was awarded. That's the first step. Find the clause. Next, ask yourself what noun in the sentence is the clause modifying? What word is it answering an adjective question about? It's answering a question about girl. Which girl? The girl to whom the door prize was awarded. Now, we're going to diagram the main sentence. Let's start with the subject and verb of the main sentence. The verb is knew. So in the verb, knew. To find the subject, we ask ourselves, who or what knew? She knew. Okay. She knew who or what. So we have a direct object. She knew who? She knew girl. So we make our direct object line, make it straight up and down. Make it straight up and down because it is an action verb. She knew who? She knew girl. And then we have a modifier, the. So we can put our article adjective under the word girl, showing she knew which girl? The girl. Good, that's the main sentence. Now we're going to diagram the clause. In this sentence, in our last sentence, the relative was doing the subject job, but that is not always going to be the case. In this sentence, our relative, to whom, is not doing the subject job. Let's find out what the subject and verb is. The subject and verb of the clause. The verb is was awarded. That's our verb phrase. And to find the subject, we ask ourselves who or what was awarded. Prize was awarded. So prize is the subject. Now let's fill in the modifiers. What kind of prize? It was the prize. It was a door prize. So we'll put those words on adjective lines. So now we've taken care of everything except the relative to whom. What sentence part is to whom doing in this sentence? Well, it is a prepositional phrase. To is a preposition, and whom is the object of the preposition. So we know that it's going to be diagrammed hanging under the line. But what we have to figure out is hanging under which word. Well, to whom is modifying the verb, was awarded. So we're going to hang it under was awarded. Because it's not a prize to whom, it was awarded to whom. So under was awarded, we put to on the preposition slanty line, and we put whom on the object of the preposition line. Now all that's left is to connect this adjective clause back to the main sentence. And again, we make a line from the relative, which is whom, and it needs to go back to girl, because that's the word being modified by this entire clause. You can just cut your dashy line right through words, right through lines, it doesn't matter. Just barge your way right through and connect girl with whom. Okay, now in this sentence, we have a relative that is implied. It's not stated in the sentence. The sentence says, the Bible is the book we desperately need. What it means is, the Bible is the book that we desperately need. So that is the relative pronoun introducing our clause. It's just invisible. So first step, identify the clause. Go ahead and put brackets or parentheses or something around the clause. That we desperately need. Now let's do the first diagram where we diagram the main sentence. We need a subject and verb for the main sentence. And we have Bible is. Bible is what? Well, notice is a linking verb. So we are going to have either a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. Bible is book. Book is a noun, so it makes it a predicate nominative. Regardless, we make the backward slashed line, which shows that book is restating the subject. Bible and book are the same thing. So Bible is book. And then just put in the modifier the as an adjective under the word book. It's the book. And that's the main sentence. Now we're going to diagram the clause on its own line. We start with the subject and verb of the clause. The subject is we, and the verb is need. We need something. Okay, so we need who or what. This is where the relative fits in this sentence. The relative is doing the job of the direct object. We need what? We need that. So make a direct object line, but instead of writing the word that, we're going to put an X on the diagram with a straight up and down direct object line. Now the reason we used an X is because the word that belongs in that location on the diagram, but it's not stated in the sentence. Whenever anything is just implied and not stated in the sentence, we use an X. And then there's just one more word we need to place, and that is desperately. Desperately is an adverb that tells to what extent we need. So we make a slanted line under need, just like we would for an adjective, and place desperately. And then all we have left to do is to connect our clause back to the main sentence. Our line needs to go from the relative to the word the clause is modifying. The relative would be that, So our line is going to go from the space with the X on it to the word book. Because which book? The book that we desperately need. Book is the word being modified by the adjective clause that we desperately need. All right, we visited some relatives whose home is in Wales. This is number 3 from the exercises. In this one, our relative is going to be doing a different job in the sentence. Okay, so first, identify the clause. The clause is, whose home is in Wales. That is modifying the word relatives. Which relatives? The ones whose home is in Wales. So let's do a diagram for the main sentence. We have subject and verb. We visited. And what do we do with some relatives? We visited who or what? We visited relatives. So relatives is a direct object. Visited is an action verb, so relatives is a direct object. We visited relatives. And then some is an adjective that goes underneath relatives. How much relatives? Some. How many? How much? Some. And now we're going to diagram the clause. Whose home is in Wales. The subject and verb of the clause would be home is. Home is the subject. Is the verb. Is a linking verb. So if we're going to have a complement, it's going to follow a backward tilted line. And it's going to be a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. Let's find out if we have a complement. Home is who or what? No, we don't have anything. So what do we do with in Wales? In Wales is a prepositional phrase, so it has to hang below the word it's modifying. It's modifying is because it's telling you it is where. That's an adverb question. So the prepositional phrase is doing an adverb job, but nevertheless, it hangs below the line. The preposition in goes on the slanty line, and the object of the preposition Wales goes on the object of the preposition line. Now, our relative, whose, in this construct, whose is doing an adjective job, and it's modifying home. Whose home? Whose. So whose hangs on an adjective line beneath home. Notice how the relatives, they do different jobs in the sentence. They all have a job to do in the sentence. Sometimes they're objects of prepositions. Sometimes the relative is the subject of the sentence. Sometimes, like in this case, the relative is an adjective modifying the subject. That's fine. That's what they do. So, okay, we've placed every word. Now we just need to connect the clause back to the sentence. So we need to connect the relative whose back to the word that's being modified. And we decided that was relatives. So we're going to connect relatives to whose with a dashed line. Like that.